The champagne was still cold when Zara Allen's marriage ended. Not in a fight. Not in a quiet conversation at home with the lights low. It ended in a restaurant full of people who had just finished clapping for her husband. Clapping for the man she had carried on her back for 6 years. Dr. James Allen. That was what the banner said. Gold letters. White background. Someone spent money on that banner. Zara did not know who, and it did not matter because the moment she read it, she felt something she had not felt in 6 years. Pride. Real bone-deep pride. She looked at James across the table. The new suit. The easy smile. The way he held his glass like he had always belonged in rooms like this. Zara paid for that suit. She paid for the dry cleaning too. She did not mind. Tonight was the night everything changed. 6 years ago, she followed James from Lagos to Seoul because he had a dream and she had faith in him. 6 years of double shifts at a pharmaceutical warehouse. 6 years of translating documents on weekends for extra cash. 6 years of eating whatever was cheapest and sleeping whatever hours were left after James finished studying. She did not resent a single day of it. Because tonight it was over. Tonight they won. Speech, someone shouted. James stood up. The room quieted. Zara set down her glass and gave him her full attention. She had been waiting for this moment. She rehearsed what she would say when he thanked her. She planned to cry. Just a little. Quietly. In the dignified way that she saved for moments that actually deserved it. James cleared his throat. Thank you all for being here tonight. His voice was smooth and warm. Something in medical school had polished him, sharpened his delivery, taught him how to command a room. This journey took everything I had, and now, standing on the other side of it, I know exactly what kind of life I want to build. Zara smiled. And I know that building it means being honest. Even when it is hard. The smile stayed on her face. But something in her stomach shifted. James reached into his jacket. Marriage is a partnership, he said slowly. And partnerships only work when both people are growing in the same direction. Zara stopped breathing. He pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the table in front of her. He did not look at her when he spoke again. I filed for divorce this morning. The room did not explode. That was the strange thing. It went quiet first. The specific kind of quiet that happens when everyone understands something terrible at the same moment. Then the whispers started. Zara stared at the envelope. Her name was on the front in James's handwriting. The handwriting she used to find comforting. James was still talking. Something about compatibility. Something about the social demands of a medical career. Something about needing a partner who understood his world now. A woman appeared at his side. Korean. Elegant. Wearing a dress that probably cost more than Zara's monthly rent. She took James's hand with the ease of someone who had been practicing the gesture for a long time. Everyone, James said, "This is Dr. Park Soyeon. Her family founded Seoul Medical Partners. We met at a conference last year." Last year. Zara did the math without meaning to. A year ago, she was working 14-hour shifts to cover James's conference registration fee. A year ago, she packed his bags and told him to come back with good news. A year ago, she waited up until 2 in the morning for a call that came at 3, and James said it went well, and she fell asleep smiling. A year ago, Zara stood up. Her chair scraped back. The sound was too loud in the silence. She picked up the envelope. She did not open it. She did not need to read it to know what was inside. She looked at James. Just once. Long enough to make sure he was looking back. Then she walked out. Not fast. Not slow. The walk of someone who knows that this moment will be replayed in other people's memories, and intends to be remembered correctly. Outside, Seoul was cold and indifferent the way big cities are at night. Zara walked 2 blocks before her legs stopped cooperating. She sat on a bench outside a convenience store where a radio was playing something slow and Korean through a cracked speaker. The tears came. She let them. She had 6 years of crying saved up, and she was going to spend every single one of them on this bench tonight, because tomorrow she was done. Her phone lit up. Messages from people at the dinner. She read the first 3 and stopped. Nobody was checking on her. They were collecting details. One message from James's aunt. You always knew his career would take him somewhere you couldn't follow. Be gracious. Don't make this ugly. Zara deleted it. She sat on that bench for a long time. When she finally stood up, something had settled in her chest. Not peace. Not yet. Something harder than peace. Something that had no patience for graceful exits or quiet dignity. She was going to rebuild. And when she was done, she was going to be standing somewhere James Allen could see her clearly. She just did not know yet what that would look like. If you are listening to this and you already know where this story is going, drop a comment right now. And if you are new here, subscribe. Because this channel is where women who get underestimated always end up winning. Always. The divorce finalized in 41 days. James's lawyer was efficient. The settlement was simple because there was nothing to settle. The apartment was in James's name. The car was in James's name. The savings account Zara contributed to for 3 years had been quietly moved to a joint account James opened without telling her. Then separated again 6 months before the divorce filing. Her lawyer explained this with the careful tone of someone delivering news they have delivered before. You could contest the account separation, the lawyer said, but it will cost money you may not have right now, and the outcome is uncertain. Zara signed the papers. She found a studio apartment in Mapo, 7th floor. One window facing a parking structure. The bathroom tiles had a crack running from the floor to the ceiling that the landlord said was cosmetic. She did not believe him, but she took it anyway because the deposit was manageable. The first month was the hardest. Not because of James. She was past James faster than she expected. The love drained out of her the moment he put that envelope on the table in front of a restaurant full of witnesses. What remained was not grief. It was something more administrative. The grief of losing a future she planned around someone who was planning a different future at the same time. The hard part was practical. Money. Structure. The architecture of a life that suddenly had no blueprint. Zara was a pharmaceutical translator. She had built that skill quietly over 6 years while James studied. She took every freelance job available, medical documents, clinical trial reports, regulatory filings. Her Korean was medical grade. Her Japanese was functional. Her English was native. She was good. She became better. By month 3, she had 3 consistent clients. By month 6, she had a waiting list. By the end of the first year, she was billing more per hour than James made as a junior resident. She did not celebrate. She reinvested. She took a certification in pharmaceutical regulatory affairs. She studied corporate legal translation. She hired a Korean tutor to eliminate the last traces of accent from her professional speech, not because she was ashamed of it, but because she understood that in rooms where decisions were made, the less people could use against you, the better. The second year, she registered a company, Allen Regulatory Solutions. She kept her married name deliberately, not because of sentiment, because she had built professional credibility under that name, and she was not giving that up too. She hired 2 junior translators. She started pitching corporate clients instead of waiting for referrals. She also moved apartments. 10th floor now. 2 windows, both facing the Han River. The third year was when everything changed. The email came on a Tuesday. Allen Regulatory Solutions is invited to submit a proposal for confidential translation and regulatory advisory services. The engagement involves international pharmaceutical contracts and Korean regulatory filings across multiple jurisdictions. Budget. Negotiable. Timeline. Immediate. Security clearance will be required prior to onboarding. No company name. A legal firm's email address. but the request clearly came from someone behind the firm. Zara replied with her proposal within 4 hours. 3 days later, she received a response. Her proposal was accepted. A meeting was scheduled. A location was provided. Car would be sent. The car was a black G-Wagon with tinted windows. The building it took her to had no signage. The security checkpoint had biometric access. Zara walked through 3 separate screening stations before she was shown into a conference room on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Seoul that made the city look small and manageable. She waited 11 minutes. Then the door opened. She had heard the name Kwon Tae-yang before the way most people in Seoul's business world had heard it. Peripherally, in the background of conversations about pharmaceutical industry consolidation. In newspaper headlines she had skimmed. He was the founder of KTY Holdings, a private investment group that had spent the last 8 years quietly acquiring pharmaceutical companies, hospital networks, and medical distribution chains across Southeast Asia. Not loudly, not with press releases and ribbon cuttings. Quietly, the way a tide comes in. By the time most people noticed the water rising, he already owned the floor they were standing on. He walked into the conference room alone. That surprised her. She expected assistants, legal teams, the architecture of power that powerful people usually use to remind you they were powerful. He sat down across from her, opened a folder, and looked at her proposal. Then he looked at her. "You shortened your timeline projections," he said. "Most firms pad them for billing flexibility." Zara kept her expression neutral. "I projected accurate timelines. Padding them would have been dishonest." He turned a page. "You also flagged a potential conflict in Section 4 of the sample contract I sent. My legal team missed it. It was a translation ambiguity," Zara said. "The Korean and English versions used different threshold definitions for regulatory triggers. In a licensing dispute, that gap would favor the opposing party." Kwon Tae-yang closed the folder. "When can you start?" "Immediately," Zara said. Something moved in his expression. Not quite a smile. More like the adjustment of an assessment. "Good," he said, and stood up. The meeting lasted 9 minutes. "Before we keep going, I need you to do something right now. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button. Because what Kwon Tae-yang is about to do to James Allen's career is not accidental. And you need to be here when it happens." The engagement began professionally. Zara's team handled translation. She handled the regulatory strategy layer on top of it, reviewing contracts before they went to Korean health authorities, flagging language that could create compliance exposure, suggesting restructuring that protected KTY's acquisitions. The work was complex and she was precise in it. She learned quickly that Kwon Tae-yang's operation was unlike any client she had worked with before. Most corporations acquired companies and then spent years trying to integrate them messily. KTY's acquisitions were surgical. He identified targets, structured deals that removed key personnel cleanly, installed new management on predetermined frameworks, and moved on. He was not building an empire. He was assembling an instrument. She understood this after 2 months of working inside the documentation. "What are you building toward?" she asked him one evening. They were in his private office late. Most of the floor had emptied. The city glittered through the windows behind him. He looked up from the document she had placed in front of him. "Most people do not ask that question," he said. "Most people are not reading your acquisition patterns," Zara replied. "You are not diversifying. Everything you are buying connects. Pharmaceutical manufacturing, hospital networks, regulatory-approved distribution. You are building a closed system." He set down his pen. "If someone controlled the full chain," Zara continued carefully, "from drug development through hospital delivery, they would not need to negotiate with anyone. They would be the negotiation." Kwon Tae-yang looked at her for a long moment. "You are the first person outside my core team who has mapped that correctly," he said. I am a regulatory specialist, Zara said. I read patterns in documents. You read more than documents, he said. The conversation ended there. But after that, the nature of the engagement shifted. Zara was no longer just processing contracts. She was in strategy meetings. She was reviewing acquisition targets before the legal team saw them. She was being treated as something closer to an internal advisor than an external vendor. She told herself it was professional. She almost believed it. The first time she understood it was becoming something else was 4 months into the engagement. She had been working 18-hour days on a regulatory crisis. One of KTY's recent acquisitions had a dormant compliance violation in its Korean operations that the seller had not disclosed. If regulators found it before KTY restructured the entity, the acquisition would be frozen and the reputational damage would be significant. Zara had not left the office building in 3 days. She had a room on the 28th floor that KTY's operations team used for extended engagements. She worked, slept 4 hours, worked again. On the third morning, she was in the middle of a filing review when the office door opened. Kwon Tae-yang came in carrying coffee. 2 cups. He set one in front of her without asking how she took it. It was made exactly the way she took it. She stared at the cup. You noticed, he said. I notice everything about people who work for me, he added, sitting down across from her. It is not personal. Zara picked up the coffee. She was too tired to pretend the gesture did not mean something. Did you sleep? He asked. For hours. He said nothing for a moment. Then, the filing can wait until tomorrow. The regulatory window does not close for another 6 days. I know, Zara said. But if I finish the primary restructuring today, your legal team has 5 days to review instead of 3. That reduces error risk. He looked at her. You do not have to prove anything to me. I am not proving anything to you, Zara said. I have a standard and it is mine. It has nothing to do with you. Another long pause. Who taught you to work like this? He asked. I taught myself, Zara said. After someone showed me that depending on other people's standards to carry you is a mistake. He did not ask what that meant. But she saw him file it somewhere. The compliance crisis resolved. The filing went through. The acquisition was secured. Kwon Tae-yang sent a bottle of wine to the conference room where Zara's team had been working. No note, just the wine and 6 glasses. Later, after her team left, Zara sat alone at the long conference table with a half glass of wine and the silence of a city that never fully went quiet. Her phone had 17 messages she had not read. Her mother asking when she was coming home. An old friend from Lagos sending a meme. 2 professional contacts with project inquiries. And 1 number she did not recognize. She opened it. I owe you more than a bottle of wine. Dinner. Friday. KTY. Zara stared at the message for a long time. She typed, that is not necessary. The reply came in under a minute. It is not about necessity. Zara put the phone face down on the table. She sat with the city and the wine and the question of whether she was capable of trusting anything that felt like this. She did not know the answer, but she went to dinner on Friday. Dinner was not one dinner. It was the first of a pattern that neither of them named because naming it would have required honesty about what it was, and both of them had reasons to avoid that particular conversation. They talked about business, about Korea's regulatory environment, about the pharmaceutical industry's consolidation trends, about Lagos, which Kwon Tae-yang had visited twice for investment research and found more interesting than most people expected, about Seoul at night, which Zara had spent 3 years learning to love after hating it for the first 6 months. She told him about the studio apartment in Mapo, the cracked bathroom tile, the parking structure view. You stayed, he said. Everyone told me to leave, Zara said. Go home. Start over somewhere comfortable. But leaving felt like letting someone else determine the boundaries of my life. I had already let that happen once. I was not doing it again. Kwon Tae-yang was quiet for a moment. I understand that, he said. More than you might think. She did not ask him to explain. But she noticed the way he said it. Like someone who had also once rebuilt from a specific kind of loss. She did not push. Neither did he. They ordered dessert. They stayed until the restaurant was empty. On the way out, his hand rested briefly at the small of her back as he held the door. It lasted 2 seconds. It was not significant. Zara thought about it for 3 days. If you have ever tried to talk yourself out of something your whole body already knew was real, drop a comment. Say, I tried. Because Zara is trying so hard right now. And it is not working. She was not supposed to fall for someone like him. She had been very clear with herself about this. After James, she constructed a very specific set of rules. No relationships with people whose worlds were more complicated than her own. No emotional investment in men who held power over her professional life. No shortcuts back to vulnerability. Kwon Tae-yang was all 3 violations at once. He was complicated in ways she had only partially mapped. His business empire operated in legal gray zones she had stopped asking about because the answers were ones she was better off not having on record. He was her most significant client. And every time they were in a room together for longer than an hour, something in her chest started behaving badly. She maintained the professional distance anyway. Until the night he told her about Seoul Medical Partners. They were working late on a new acquisition proposal. KTY was considering entering the hospital acquisition market directly, moving from supplying hospital networks to owning them. Zara was reviewing the target list. She stopped at item 7. Seoul Medical Partners Hospital Group, she read aloud. Parent company, Seoul Medical Partners Foundation. Current valuation. She stopped. Kwon Tae-yang was watching her. That is James's hospital group, Zara said carefully. His wife's family owns the foundation. Yes, Kwon Tae-yang said. You knew that, Zara said. I know everything about my targets, he said. It is not why I chose it. She looked at him. The group is undervalued, he continued evenly. The foundation has 3 non-performing assets that the current management lacks the operational sophistication to restructure. It is a straightforward acquisition case. The fact that your ex-husband works there is coincidental. Is it? Zara said. His expression did not change. But something in his eyes did. Does it matter? He said quietly. It matters to me, Zara said. I will not be used as a variable in someone's business strategy. You are not a variable, he said. You are the reason I built a strategy worth executing. The room was very quiet. Zara looked at the document in front of her. Then at him. If you acquire Seoul Medical Partners, she said slowly, James Allen works for you. Yes, Kwon Tae-yang said. She was quiet for a long time. I want that to have nothing to do with why I am in this room, she said finally. It has everything to do with why you are exceptional, he said. And nothing to do with why I am acquiring that hospital group. She believed him. She was not entirely sure she should. But she believed him. The Seoul Medical Partners acquisition took 4 months. Zara was not on the deal team. She removed herself from it the day she saw it on the target list. She handed the regulatory filing work to her deputy and stayed in her lane on the other KTY projects. She told Kwon Tae-yang why. I understand, he said. She waited for an argument. None came. She respected that more than she expected to. She heard about the deal's progress from secondary sources. Industry newsletters. A contact at the Korean Health Ministry who mentioned the filing volume coming through from KTY's legal team. The careful, inevitable assembly of ownership that was Kwon Tae-yang's signature. She did not ask for updates. She did not follow James on any platform. She had not, since the bench outside the convenience store on the night her marriage ended. But she knew, from the industry circles she now moved in, that James had risen quickly at Seoul Medical Partners. He was a department head now. He had a profile on the hospital's website with a photograph. He looked well. He looked exactly like someone who believed they had made the right choices. She wondered sometimes if he thought about the bench, about the cold, about the woman he handed papers to in front of a room full of witnesses. Probably not. People who do not carry guilt rarely revisit the places they left it. She let it go. Not for him. For herself. The acquisition closed on a Thursday. Kwon Tae-yang texted her that evening. Done. She replied, "Congratulations." A pause. "Then have dinner with me." She smiled at her phone in the dark of her apartment. Friday, she replied. He sent back a single character. A period. The punctuation of someone who had gotten what they wanted and did not need to elaborate. At dinner, he was different. Less guarded. Something about the completion of a long project had loosened the particular tension he usually carried. They talked about the next phase. Hospital operational restructuring. Personnel changes. The rebranding of the network under KTY Health. And then, halfway through the main course, he asked her something he had never asked before. What would you have done if you had not had to rebuild here? If the divorce had not happened? Where would you be? Zara thought about it. Smaller, she said finally. I would be smaller. I was building a life around someone else's dream. My version of success was being good enough support for his ambition. That was as big as I let myself think. He said nothing. I am grateful, Zara said. And I say that knowing how strange it sounds. Being humiliated in a restaurant full of people and left on a cold bench with divorce papers was genuinely the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it removed the ceiling. Kwon Tae-yang looked at her. You are the most honest person I have ever met, he said. I have no reason to be anything else, she said. He reached across the table. His hand covered hers. Neither of them moved for a long moment. I am not easy to be with, he said. My life is complicated. My business creates enemies. The kind of enemies who look for weaknesses. I know what I am looking at, Zara said. Do you? You are a man who built something large enough to be dangerous and are now wondering if letting someone close makes it more dangerous or less, she said. And the answer is that it depends entirely on who the person is. He turned her hand over in his. Who are you? He asked quietly. Someone who already survived the worst thing that could happen to her, Zara said. I am not afraid of complicated. He did not say anything else. But his thumb traced slow circles on the inside of her wrist, and neither of them called for the check for another hour. If you are watching this and thinking what I think you are thinking, subscribe right now, because this story is not even close to over. The part where James Allen realizes who just bought his hospital has not happened yet. They did not announce anything. There was no conversation where they defined what they were to each other. It happened the way things happen between two people who are both too careful and too far gone. Gradually, then completely. Zara still maintained her own apartment, her own company, her own client roster outside of KTY. She was careful about this. Not because she did not trust him, because she had learned, expensively, that independence was not a luxury. It was infrastructure. Kwon Tae-yang did not ask her to give any of it up. He did ask her to meet his mother. Once. Briefly. A lunch that was technically described as a client appreciation event until Zara arrived and found it was 6 people at a private dining room, and one of them was a woman with Kwon Tae-yang's eyes who studied Zara with the particular attention of someone conducting a serious evaluation. The mother said very little. On the way out, she touched Zara's arm. He has never brought anyone here before, she said simply. Then she walked away. Zara told Kwon Tae-yang in the car afterward. He was quiet for a moment. She liked you, he said. You could not possibly know that from 35 minutes and 12 sentences. Zara said. I know my mother, he said. She would not have touched your arm if she did not. Zara looked out the window at the city. She felt something she had not felt in so long she almost did not recognize it. Safe. Not in the soft, uncomplicated way. In the specific way of someone who had been exposed to extreme cold for a long time and was finally, carefully, beginning to believe in warmth again. She did not say this to him. She said, "Your mother has good posture." He laughed. She realized she had not heard him genuinely laugh before. She decided she liked the sound. 6 months after the Seoul Medical Partners acquisition closed, Kwon Tae-yang was restructuring the hospital group. Department heads were being reviewed. Personnel decisions were being made based on KTY's performance frameworks. Zara knew this because she was back on the KTY work and the hospital network was now part of it. She was careful to stay in her lane. She handled regulatory filings. She did not look at personnel files. But she heard about James anyway. A contact in the medical industry texted her one morning. "Did you know your ex's hospital just got bought out? Apparently the new owners are doing a full leadership audit. Word is several department heads are being let go. Your ex is on the list." Zara read the message twice. She put her phone face down. She went back to the regulatory filing she was working on. Her hands were steady. She did not tell Kwon Tae-yang she knew. She did not ask if he knew. She understood that the answer to both questions was probably yes, and she had decided, a long time ago, that the acquisition had nothing to do with her. She believed that what happened to James was the natural consequence of a man who had risen on the strength of a connection to a family that no longer owned the institution. Without the Park family's ownership protecting him, James Allen was a middling department head with a decent record and a political maneuvering style that did not survive contact with a new ownership framework that valued performance data over family proximity. He had nothing to offer that the new owners valued. That was not Zara's doing. That was just what happened when the floor you built your confidence on stopped being yours. She found out on a Tuesday. She had been tired for 2 weeks and attributed it to the intensity of the hospital network regulatory restructuring. She skipped lunch more often than she should. She fell asleep before 10 nights in a row. She was not the kind of person who ignored signals. But she was also the kind of person who had too much work to stop and examine them. Her assistant noticed before she did. "You look pale," Chitty said. "Have you eaten today?" "I will," Zara said. She did not. That evening, alone in her apartment, she added up the signals with the methodical attention she gave to everything else. She bought a test on the way home from work. She sat on the floor of her bathroom for a very long time after reading it. 2 lines. She told Kwon Tae-yang the next morning. She did not plan it. She had intended to sit with the information for a few days. To be rational about it. To enter the conversation with a plan. Instead, she walked into his office at 7:30 in the morning before anyone else arrived and said, "I need to tell you something." He looked up from his desk. She told him. The silence that followed was the longest 11 seconds of her life. Then he stood up. He came around the desk and stood in front of her and looked at her with an expression she had not seen on his face before. Something unguarded. Something that had not passed through the usual filtration. "Are you all right?" he said. "I do not know yet," she said honestly. He nodded slowly. Then he said, "This changes things." "I know," she said. "I mean, it changes everything for me," he said. "Not in the way you might be afraid of. In the way where you need to know that whatever you decide, you are not deciding alone." Zara looked at him. "This is a significant thing to say," she said carefully. "I know what it is," he said. "So do I," she said. They looked at each other across the small distance between them. Then he said, "I am not a man who says things to manage situations. I say things I mean. And what I mean is that I want this. I want you to have this. I want us to build this." He paused. "If you want the same," he said. Zara was quiet for a moment. "I want the same," she said. He crossed the distance between them. He held her the way someone holds something they are not willing to lose. Not frantically, steadily, like a decision. Zara pressed her face against his shoulder and breathed. She had not let anyone hold her like this in 3 years. It turned out she had been waiting for someone who knew how to do it correctly. If you are feeling this right now, type, "She deserves this" in the comments. Because she does. And I want to see how many of you agree. The KTY Foundation Medical Excellence Gala was an annual event. This year, it carried additional significance. The acquisition of Seoul Medical Partners had made KTY the largest private healthcare group in South Korea. The gala would be the first formal public occasion under the new unified brand. Kwon Tae-yang asked Zara to attend with him. She was 7 months pregnant. She said, "People will ask questions." He said, "Let them." She said, "The medical community will be there. This is James's world." He said, "James Allen no longer has a position in any hospital in my network." She looked at him. He returned the look without apology. His contract was not renewed, Kwon Tae-yang said. "On performance grounds. I did not make the decision. My operations team made it based on their review framework." "And you did not intervene," Zara said. "It was not my place to intervene," he said. His performance record did not support renewal. Zara was quiet. Then, "I want to be clear that I am attending this gala as myself, not as an instrument of anything." "You are always yourself," he said. "That is why I want you there." The night of the gala, she wore a deep green dress with a structure that worked with her body instead of against it. Simple, precise, the kind of thing that required confidence to wear correctly. She had confidence. She had rebuilt it from nothing, piece by piece, over 3 years in a city that owed her nothing and gave back exactly what she put in. In the car, Kwon Tae-yang looked at her for a long moment. "You are extraordinary," he said. "I know," she said. He smiled. They arrived. The venue was the kind of space that reminded you why certain rooms existed. High ceilings, controlled lighting, the specific temperature that made people feel slightly more important than they were. The cameras were outside. Kwon Tae-yang was well known enough to generate press attention. He stepped out of the car first. The flashes started immediately. He turned and offered his hand. Zara took it. She stepped out. The cameras went silent for exactly 1 second. Then they went insane. Kwon Tae-yang put his hand on her back and guided her toward the entrance. Just before they went inside, he stopped. He turned toward the cameras. He said nothing. He simply placed his hand on Zara's pregnant belly and held it there. The shouted questions became a wall of noise. He leaned toward a microphone. "This is Zara Allen. She is carrying my child. Treat her accordingly." Then they went inside. The room knew who they were before they crossed the threshold. Zara felt it. The recalibration that happened in a space when power entered it. People adjusting their positions. Conversations pausing. Eyes tracking without appearing to track. She held her head at the angle she had learned in a restaurant 3 years ago on the worst night of her life. The angle that said, "I know exactly what I am walking into and I am not afraid of any of it." She saw James from across the room. He was standing near the bar. His tuxedo was well fitted. He looked like he belonged in the room. He did not belong in the room. The room belonged to Kwon Tae-yang, which meant, by extension, it belonged to Zara. The distinction mattered. James saw her. The color left his face so completely and so fast that the woman beside him, Park Soyeon, noticed and turned to follow his gaze. Soyeon's expression was harder to read. She took in Zara, the dress, the pregnancy, Kwon Tae-yang's hand at the small of Zara's back, and arrived at the correct conclusion with the efficiency of someone who was intelligent enough to understand what they were looking at even when they did not want to. James began moving toward them. Kwon Tae-yang saw him coming. He did not move to intercept. He simply remained exactly where he was, at Zara's side, which meant that approaching Zara meant approaching them both. James stopped 2 feet away. "Zara," he said, His voice was careful, measured. The voice of a man who had decided on a strategy in the 10 seconds it took him to cross the room. "James," she said. Her voice was warmer than his, effortlessly so. She was not angry. She had put the anger down a long time ago, somewhere on a bench in Mapo, and she had not picked it back up. She had better things to carry now. "You look," he started. She waited. She was curious what word he would choose. He could not finish the sentence. She understood. There was no word that would work for him. Beautiful made him sound like he still had an opinion that mattered. Well made him sound clinical. Happy made him sound like he was giving her permission to be. He landed on, "I did not expect to see you here. I am the lead regulatory advisor for KTY Health," Zara said pleasantly. "Where else would I be?" Something moved across his face. "You work for?" Kwon Tae-yang spoke. "Beside me, yes." He said it the way someone states a coordinate. Flat and geographic and absolute. James looked at him for the first time. Really looked at him. He went very still. The understanding of who Kwon Tae-yang was, what KTY was, what the acquisition of Seoul Medical Partners had meant for James's career, assembled itself in James Allen's face in real time. Zara watched it happen without pleasure or pain. Just the neutral attention of someone observing a process. "The hospital," James said. "You bought the hospital." "I bought the hospital group," Kwon Tae-yang said. "And my position was reviewed according to KTY's standard performance framework," Kwon Tae-yang said, "along with all existing leadership contracts. The decisions were made by my operations team." James was quiet. "I see," he said finally. Soyeon appeared at his side. She looked at Zara. Something complicated moved across her face. Then she looked at Kwon Tae-yang, and the complication collapsed into a more careful expression. "We should find our table," she said to James. James did not move immediately. He looked at Zara, specifically at her. Not at Kwon Tae-yang. Not at the room. Her. Zara met his eyes. She waited for something. Some remnant of the weight he used to have in her life. Some echo of what it felt like to have loved him, or to have lost him, or to have survived him. She felt nothing that needed naming. "Are you happy?" James asked. The question came out quieter than anything else he had said. It did not have the architecture of a performance. It was just a question. Zara thought about the apartment on the 10th floor. The Han River at 5 in the morning when everything was quiet. The work that was hers entirely. The person growing inside her, unhurried and certain. The man beside her whose hand had moved from her back to her hand without drama. Holding it the way someone holds something real. "Yes," she said. "I am." James nodded once. Then Soyeon took his arm, and they moved toward their table. And Zara watched them go with the uncomplicated ease of someone whose past had just confirmed that it was exactly where it belonged. Behind her. Later that night, after the speeches and the handshakes and the moment, a photographer from a major Korean business publication asked if she would pose for a photograph, and she said yes, because why wouldn't she? After all of it, they were in the car going home. The city moved past the windows. Seoul at midnight. Indifferent and enormous, and hers in the specific way cities become yours when you refuse to leave them. Kwon Tae-yang was looking out the opposite window. She studied his profile, the line of his jaw, the particular stillness he carried even in motion. She thought about the bench in Mapo, the cracked bathroom tile, the first business card she had printed for Allen Regulatory Solutions. The moment she stopped being afraid of how much she was capable of. She thought about the envelope on the restaurant table. She thought about how sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you is just a door. She put her hand over his. He turned to look at her. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. She considered. "For not needing me to be smaller," she said. "For being someone I did not have to shrink for." He turned his hand over and held hers. He said, Thank you for being someone worth building something real with. They rode the rest of the way in the quiet that only two people who have stopped pretending with each other can share. The baby moved. Zara pressed Kwon Tae-yang's hand against her side. He went completely still. Then very, very quietly he laughed. The laugh she had decided she liked the sound of. Outside, Seoul kept going, indifferent and enormous. But inside the car, the world was exactly the right size. 8 months later, the Korean business press ran a profile on Kwon Tae-yang. It was a long piece, comprehensive. It covered the KTY empire in its current form, the hospital network, the pharmaceutical holdings, the investment strategy, the regulatory model that had become an industry reference. On the second page, there was a photograph. Kwon Tae-yang at his desk. Behind him, through the office window, the Seoul skyline. And in the corner of the frame, slightly out of focus, a woman in a chair beside the window, reading with a baby asleep against her chest. The caption read, Kwon Tae-yang at KTY Holdings headquarters. The woman in the background was not named. She did not need to be. She was the reason the room felt like something worth being in. She was Zara Allen. And she had never, not once, in all of it, gone home with her tail between her legs. If you made it to the end of this story, you are exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe right now if you are not already. And leave a comment telling me, what was the moment you knew Zara was going to win? Was it the bench? Was it the phone call? Was it the gala? Tell me below. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today.